Good to go.
All right. First of all, I'm
Hey, Bill, one thing I wanted to bring up, just in the last meeting, for the members that are here that are going to vote, instead of everybody just kind of sitting, waiting to know when to vote, as the chair, just when we're calling.
yeah,
for a vote,
usually,
call
yeah,
each person.
usually I'll call a roll call.
But we need a roll call being online. Just, you're going to have to just,
Right.
but what I'm saying is call out the people individually so that they can make their call. So they're not, everybody kind of doesn't want to talk over the next person.
Oh, I got you. All right. Well, call this meeting to order. The meeting is being recorded. As it is a entirely remote meeting, we will be using the roll call vote. We will also run a roll call now. Ambrosino here. Liana?
Here.
Lonnie?
Here.
Brendan?
Chanel here.
And Mesa?
Here.
All right, so those are the members. So we can move forward. Gabe, what do you have well, the first item on the agenda, I believe, was voting on the minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Did I wasn't here.
I'm not
What's that?
sure if we have. I'm not sure that we have them if Ellen is not on.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, that was the next thing I was going to address. We have lost our secretary. So I'm going to probably table it to the next meeting when Jack and Dylan here, but we're obviously going to need someone to do minutes from these meetings. And maybe I was hoping I could convince Dylan to take on that role. I know she's got a lot going on, but she's very good at it. And I think, but I'll talk to her first. But I say we table that for the next meeting. And I guess we'll have to pass over the voting of the minutes. So we'll move on to the next item.
Yeah, I think the main thing for today, since we've kind of worked through all the bylaws that we were thinking about for fall, in August, Jane and I put together just sort of a high-level overview of some fixes we think we should be making to Articles 1 and 2 of the zoning bylaw. So for everyone's information, I'm sure most of you know, there's 6 main articles of the zoning bylaw. Today we'll be looking again at Articles 1 and 2. Article 1 is sort of the general article, and then Article 2 is all districts. And I think I'll just get started and screen share, and we can kind of go through the recommendations we're making for changes to make, and we'd like feedback on those recommendations before we get into any serious rewriting. So let me share. All right, can everyone see that? Do you want me to zoom in?
If you could zoom a little bit, it'd be great.
Yeah. All right. And Jane, Jane also did a lot on this analysis. So Jane, feel free to jump in at any point if you think if you want to elaborate on anything.
Maybe I'll just mention one thing before you get started. And that is just asking the committee to think about whether they like the current formatting with the lettering and numbering of sections and subsections, or if you might be open to that being revised. But I don't need a response now, just something to consider.
Liana?
No, apologies. I did not mean to raise my hand.
Oh, okay. All right. So I think for section 1.01, we have a purpose and authority section. What we found in reviewing it is there's some odd language in there. It's mostly boilerplate, and if you compare it to other towns, I'm sure that the original language comes from the state, but there's some odd language in there about morals, that the zoning should be enforcing morality. I don't know if that's exactly I don't know how that got in there. But I think that's something we'd like to change to just make it, Liana? You're
Yeah,
muted.
sorry, I think I have what's our current version of the bylaw. I'm not seeing anything to do with morals, so do we have the current use of the bylaw so you could just show us?
Yeah, so I have from the site, and it looks like it's from 2023. It says promote the health, safety, convenience, morals, and general welfare of present and future inhabitants. That's just odd language that I haven't
Yeah.
seen before.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not sure I noticed it or when that got in there.
Yeah, and sorry, this is under the definition of accessory use?
No, this is in purpose and authority, section 1.01.
Oh, purpose and authority. I'm sorry. I thought you said it was on the definition and I was so lost. Okay, so under purpose and authority, we have that sentence. Okay,
Yeah, and
got
I
it.
think, to be honest with you, I think the original release of the zoning bylaw was like in 1970.
Right.
The current zoning bylaw, so morality might have been a thing back then.
I said that's kind of gone out the window. No, I won't
Yeah.
start any trouble on this call.
But I think just in general, I'm gonna pull. In our work, we find the city of Worcester is nice to draw from because they have so many, different uses and unlike some of our towns, they actually have to address these uses on a regular basis. So we're gonna look at Worcester and then a couple other towns in central Massachusetts to see what they're doing for purpose and authority. In general, it's
Yeah,
a very
Yeah, and I would look at towns relative to us, like Upton
right,
and Hopedale, or,
exactly.
sort of people within our region, you know.
And then I think, in addition to everything in there, I think we want to address that the bylaws should be dealing with stormwater and low impact development, as well as aesthetics. And then Jane wants to recommend changing the word farm and farms to farmland. So currently, it says irretrievable loss of farm, wetlands, and woodlands. So changing that to farmland would put that in line with the rest of that statement. Moving on, we're looking at section 1.02 definitions. I think the way we're going to address definitions throughout this process is we'd like to, I think in general, we like to see the definitions from all the sections consolidated in the main definition section. But for now, we're going to focus on that original definition section, adjusting those. And then as we go through the rest of the document, any relevant definitions will pull out and put into this section. So for now, we're just looking at what's in the definition section. So looking at accessory use or structure, subsection 5 is not a definition, but a prohibition. So it says no use that is prohibited shall be allowed as an accessory use, which is kind of a funny statement.
Yeah, that should be in the use table.
Exactly. And then looking at dwelling, I think we're going to introduce several different definitions for dwelling. So looking at multifamily, single family, two family duplex, kind of to address all the possible use cases and doing it like dwelling, comma, single family, so that they're all in the same area in the definition section. Looking at H, fur farm, the keeping of carnivorous fur-bearing animals. Oh, Liana?
I was just gonna say, I'm assuming that the state building code has a definition of dwelling and,
Yeah.
multifamily dwelling and such. So I always think, to the extent possible, if our intent is to align with that, then we should use
Yeah.
that definition or cite to the state building code versus trying to come up with something on our own, to the extent it's
Yeah.
appropriate. If there's a reason that we want to define it differently, then
Yeah.
so be it. But yeah.
Yeah, well, definitely. I mean, that's in all these reviews, a big thing is just bringing everything in line with the current state policies and stuff. So yeah, looking at H, fur farm, the keeping of carnivorous fur-bearing animals for commercial purposes. Is that a relevant definition? Is that something we need? Carnivorous is kind of odd.
Yeah, why
That's-
carnivorous
that seems that's so specific. So I mean, do we want to? That's one. I mean, Jane, what do you think? I know you were the one who pulled this.
It's whatever the committee thinks. Being a rural or semi-rural town, I didn't know if you still had like taxidermists or people who would be dealing with animal furs. I know
Did
my
you mention it
ancestors were
elsewhere in the
fur
bylaw?
traders.
I'm not, I'm certainly not aware of any. We've never been approached about it. So, but I'd rather err on the side of caution. If someone's gonna start doing this, the town should know about it, but.
Yeah.
Minks are
Um,
carnivorous, as in mink coats.
Oh.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm not sure we need to use the word carnivorous, but
You better, no, you have to
I-
have the word
honestly, I'd pull them
carnivorous.
out.
If you
Do you
take
think
out
that-
the word carnivorous, you're going to open up a whole lot of other animals
Yeah.
that'll become jurisdictional.
yeah, well, I'm afraid,
There's other animals kept for fur that are not carnivorous though. So what's the intent of this?
We're just wondering if it's still a relevant term in mending and whether it should stay in the use table
Well, I
or the
think
definitions.
you might need to define it to some extent because it is a listed prohibited use, except to the
Yeah.
extent that it constitutes an exempt agricultural use. So I think if it's going to stay as a prohibited use, then, unless there's a common meaning of fur farm, then you might want to retain
yeah,
it
that's
or.
what I was
Yeah,
wondering.
That's fair.
Where does the limitation of fur farm end? I mean, are we talking sheep and llama too, or, I mean,
They're not
Yeah.
carnivorous.
Chinchillas.
well, that's,
They are
yeah,
carnivorous.
it certainly say if the word carnivorous is still in there, it would,
Yeah.
but in Brendan's case, he's right too. We're looking at llamas and sheep that provide fur. Those aren't carnivorous, so we've got kind of a double-edged sword going on here. Does fur farm capture all is the question.
And
Yeah, I was just wondering, do you think it was originally in there because of smell? Because
Hmm.
leather
Mm.
type plants can be really smelly. So I was just wondering if that's why it was in there.
It's possible.
That's a good point. So I guess
although when this bylaw was written, I don't think many people in Mendon complained about smell. I mean, the whole town smelled. We had pig farms, cow farms. We had all farms here at that time.
So I think for now, it sounds like we do want to at least have this addressed in the bylaw. I don't think it's the worst idea if you have, if you want to, have agricultural uses to at least, this is a type of farm. I think what we'll do is, again, look at what other communities are doing around this who have more recently updated bylaws. Yeah, Jane?
Getting back to alpaca, sheep, llamas, they're typically referred to as fiber rather than fur. So I don't know if we need to make a distinction
Okay.
because alpaca are cute.
As
Yeah,
long
I
as we
think
can get
that's-
alpaca socks for Christmas, as
Yes.
long as nothing's gonna affect
Yeah, I
that.
don't think anyone's. Yeah, exactly. I don't think anyone's suggesting restricting that.
I think you guys have the right idea. Let's look at what some other towns are doing and
Okay.
use them as an example.
Okay. And then subdivision, we've already been talking about this, that we're gonna propose some updates to common driveways and flag lots, but I think we're gonna work on that later. So we have some recommended new definitions. First is defining clear view triangle. So this would be, as you can see on the screen, we have a diagram of what that would look like. Basically, to make sure that intersections are unobstructed, that 25 feet from the point of intersection, you need to have an unobstructed view, so no buildings or trees in that view triangle. Jane, do you have any more details on this?
Or signs.
Yeah.
Bylaws that I've seen say that vegetation can be below 3 feet or above 8 feet. But say if you have a tree, like the ground cover needs to be trimmed between 3 and 8 feet to keep driver's visibility open.
Bill?
Yeah, just one question I had. One thing I wanted to consider back on the item before. If you go up, we're talking about, and we're not going to relive it tonight, but just something for people to think about when they're thinking about it. Over the last several weeks, I've spent a lot of time looking at surrounding towns regarding common driveways and the pork chop lots, specifically Upton. They're a large land use like Mendon. And I talked to some people over there who are familiar with it, and hasn't been a major problem for Upton. It's not like it became something out of control. So I just wanted to stick that out there when you're thinking, when you're driving around like I do, as I've become accustomed as a planner for so long. I look at what other towns are doing as I'm driving, and I try to follow, use them for guidance. So just as you're thinking about it when we're going forward, something to think about. All right, we can go forward now, Gabe. Sorry.
Yeah. So are people okay? The clear view triangle, that makes sense to people.
Yeah, does this follow Mass Highway?
I'll have to check.
Yeah, because Mass Highway regulates a lot of what we do with our roadways. So, we obviously have our own guidelines, and if we need to adjust from Mass Highway, we can. I was asking that as a reference point, I guess.
Brendan?
I was just wondering what the enforcement mechanism of this is, or the proposed enforcement mechanism.
If there was a road that can, it would come before planning. It would either be a subdivision or whatever, but it would come
Or
before
site
planning or site plan.
So this is only at time equals 0, essentially, not ongoing.
Yeah, well, it comes up quite a bit. Now, we do have a consultant engineer we hire, and he reviews all these. And if it doesn't meet, they need to ask for a waiver from that. And if the board has to determine whether that's an acceptable waiver. The board very rarely waives something of safety value. I'll tell you that right now. There would have to be a good reason for us to waive it.
Yeah, makes sense. I
Perfect
was just
thing I
curious.
can think of is
I'm
if
okay
the
with
town
this.
builds something on the corner, you're gonna have you could have some site variables on a town property. And those, once again, you can't break the law for the town, but the board certainly has a right to waive technical compliance. I mean, that's stood up in court when the planning board tends to waive something for good reason. It's usually not debatable, but.
Liana?
Yeah, I had two questions. The first question is this term referenced in the bylaw already, or is this a new concept that's going to be introduced into site plan review or some place like that?
I think
It's a new concept.
It's a new term. So then at some point, will this be introduced into the bylaw so that the fact that we have a definition for it makes sense?
Yes.
Okay. And then kind of to tag on to Brendan's prior question, because I heard you mention vegetation in terms of the line of sight. And so this would mean that if you approve something at ground zero, even if that vegetation then were to become an issue and to encroach on this line of sight, there would be no enforcement or compliant or action against the person to maintain that line of sight?
No, there should be a severability attached to that. I mean, we should be able to, like, we hear complaints from the community all the time. And if certainly, like, if a road's not approved yet, let's say, for an example, we would hold out on that road approval until not only that they took care of the issue, but they showed us how they could future ensure that it wouldn't be a problem. That's why we very rarely, to be honest with you, I don't particularly like any growth in the sight line, because that's generally what happens. Eventually it overgrows and then suddenly it's in the sight line.
Right,
You know,
right.
it becomes a safety issue.
Cool. I'm gonna move on. The rest of these are kind of a little less. Basically, we want to incorporate new marijuana and cannabis regulations, including new definitions. Any other new or updated definitions in Chapter 40A. Adding new definitions associated with new bylaws. So for now, that'll just be looking at accessory dwelling units. Adding a definition for special permit, adding definitions for the different types of setbacks, and then we're going to create definitions that will address manufactured housing and trailer parks. I think currently in the bylaw, we just have a definition for trailer park, and trailer that is not necessarily reflective of what could be coming in. There's a distinction between obviously like an RV and a manufactured home. Manufactured home, RV, I feel like trailers are often considered sort of a blight. Manufactured homes, nowadays from the exterior, you just think it's like a ranch or a small house. So we're going to be getting some definitions together to distinguish between the different types of trailers, recreational vehicles, manufactured homes, and probably a term other than trailer park, if it's a manufactured home development. Moving on, we're looking at delineation of districts. We're going to probably include, we'll be revising the zoning map, and we're going to include a new approved date on the zoning map so that it shows that it's up to date. Looking at the rural residential district, purpose indicates that rural residential district is to provide for low density single and two family residential uses and to promote agricultural activities. Definition section defines one family and multifamily, recommending using consistent terms such as single family, two family, and multifamily. Recommend also that these terms are hyphenated, except for multifamily, which is one word. No comments on the general residential district, the general business district. In the definition, it discusses acceptable access. Let me just scroll to that for myself so I can read that out to you. So general business district, to provide for the business and retail needs of the residents of the town in areas where access is acceptable and where adequate off-street parking can be provided. So how are we defining acceptable access? Is this necessary is the reference to access and parking necessary in the district definition?
Yeah, it probably doesn't need to be acceptable access, but I mean, I think we kind of interpret that as maybe emergency vehicle or, we broke this bylaw so people could turn single family dwellings that currently now into offices, but we still want to, like the off-street parking and the acceptable access, we still want to make sure it's a safe environment.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, Brendan, I didn't see your hand. Are you trying to say something? Sorry.
Oh, no, I must not have lowered my hand.
Oh,
Sorry
okay,
about that.
good. No worries. And then looking at highway business district, what is the criteria to indicate that a property has adequate highway exposure and access? So same sort of question. So for 3 and 4, those two districts, either the zoning bylaws or subdivision rules and regs should specifically identify the requirements for having accessible access and acceptable highway exposure and access, such as minimum frontage, driveway separation, and site distance. So I think for the if that is the intent, I think when we look at the dimensional regulations, we should be using emergency vehicle access as the criterion. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then looking at lots in 2 districts, I think, pretty straightforward bylaw. I think something that Jane and I would really strongly recommend doing, and we can have our GIS guy look at this, is basically putting together a map of any lots that are in 2 districts and considering if we need to amend the zoning districts so that there's no split zoning lots. And we can go through that on a case-by-case basis. I think the primary thing we'd look at for, sort of normal single family lots, things that aren't, if there's huge lots that are town-owned land or something like that, that we can have a more involved discussion. But I think for a typical like business or residential lot, we would just look at whatever the frontage is on and what the zoning district of the frontage is, or the majority of the lot, something along those lines. But I think it would be helpful to kind of eliminate those split zoning lots, if we can in this process.
Well, that's a difficult task in Mendon, Gabe,
Yeah.
because Mendon has a 200-foot commercial depth. And let's face it, a lot of properties go much deeper than 200 feet. So you end up having a split lot. We've always interpreted, the Mendon allows for the first 230 feet unless requested by special permit. But I think we've always looked at the lot frontage as the indicator for the lot. And I know we've been pressed a couple times legally on it, specifically a new, I dare to say, a new strip club coming to town. That was a split lot, and we got a lot of pressure legally. And general town council at that time kind of said, it takes on the characteristics of the front lot. So we sort of had to allow the depth of the lot. So, and I mean, there could be a lot of interpretations into that, but I mean, let's face it, these bylaws we write are only as good as they'll stand up in court. And when pressed upon, we had already lost enough battles on the strip club. I don't think town council had the flavor to fight another battle with them. So we awarded the full commercial lot.
So do we want to not look at changing those zoning districts, or is that something we should look in? Because we can look at the mapping and stuff. It's not.
I think we can take a look
for
at
us.
it.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we take a look at it and see what's sensible, and then everybody can make. This is a committee. One voice doesn't speak, we all speak. So I think it would be good to look at.
Okay.
One way or the other. One way or the other.
Cool. And then something else that I know we discussed a while back, but I think it would make sense to implement a new either underlying district or overlay district that would act as a village business district with a focus on mixed use and multifamily housing. That would be starting around Town Hall to the Milford and North intersection, and maybe going up to the car dealerships. That was something that was like kind of how Jack and Dylan looked at a potential village business district, but obviously that's up for discussion.
I'm going to break something out here, and we'll see if Liana has a record of this thing somewhere. We had started a village district bylaw several years ago. We
Cool.
were never able to bring it to completion, but somebody's got to have record of that thing somewhere. Do you still have that, Liana? Or?
I will check, but I've changed computers numerous times, but it might be in my email history. So I'll do a search and let you know what I find. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Pat might have it too. I'll touch base with Pat, and I don't want you having to go searching. Let me reach out to Pat first.
Okay.
And because I think he told me he still has it, and it's pretty detailed. Pat, Liana, and Shirley Smith at the time worked a great deal on it, and it actually went all the way down Providence Road. So it entailed a pretty good sized village. I believe, I've always been a believer that if you build it, they will come. So if we make these things, they're not going to happen probably in my lifetime, but someday they will happen.
Cool. Yeah, if you can dig that up, that would be helpful. And obviously we're prepared to put something together as a start.
Sure.
Moving on. So looking at section 1.04, administration, section A, applicability, check subdivision rules and regulations. This should be addressed here. For subdivisions that have an HOA, staff reviewing the covenant should make sure that covenants also include a statement that matches this item. So applicability currently reads, when the application of this zoning bylaw imposes greater restriction than those imposed by any other regulations, permits, restrictions, easements, covenants, or agreements, the provisions of this bylaw shall control. And then looking at H, which reads, effective date, the zoning bylaw shall take effect as provided by law. We should reference the MGL section that, is the law that we're referencing. Looking at section 1.05, Board of Appeals, substantial hardship, financial or otherwise, recommended expanding on this term as follows. A hardship cannot be self-created by the applicant or landowner in accordance with MGL 40A section 10. A substantial hardship must not result from actions taken by the applicant or property owner. I think that's a fair. Brendan?
So my understanding of that also carries over to the previous owner and right as well. So say someone created a lot that they knew that they was non-buildable, no way, no how, and then they sold it to someone. I mean, just because they sold it to someone doesn't mean that that person now can build on it.
Right.
Well, Brendan, usually we now require when we, what they call an 81P or approval not required, come before the board. If it's a non-buildable lot, we have that stated on the plan. So it's
Yeah, I
less
agree.
likely to be.
That was just an example. I mean, I just wanted to highlight that it's not just the current owners, it also carries backward in time.
Yep.
Cool. And then looking at section 1.06, provisions for applying for a special permit. Looking at A, so what we read in A, there's several dimensional regulations referenced. Each lot used in part or in whole for a business shall have minimum frontage of 200 and minimum depth from the street sideline of 300 feet. No building shall cover an area in excess of 1/3 of the total area of the lot. No building or structure shall be.
Can you scroll down a little bit? I'm not seeing it.
Yeah. Oh, so this is in the zoning bylaw itself, which I like.
Oh, you're reading the zoning bylaw. Okay.
Yeah. Sorry. But it's in the chat if anyone wants to pull it up. So basically there's a bunch of dimensional regulations in the special permit section. And we want to make sure that the actual dimensional regulations are consistent with the requirements of the special permit in this section. And the way I would approach it is if we want to change the dimensional regulations, the special permit section should address any of those changes.
Okay.
Section B, we ran this by Dylan and Jack, asking if we want to still require 6 physical copies. What they told us is that they like even though so digital copies will typically go out to the town departments.
Yep.
But in terms of the physical copies, they said it's still helpful to get physical copies for the board. So I think we're not gonna change that.
Okay.
So now, no comments on C and D in the special permit section. Looking at section 2.01 dimensional regulations. So we're going to look first at the dimensional regulations table. I would recommend, if you can, pulling up the it's page 8 in the document I linked. So just because it's it's a table, so it's a lot to look at. As noted, we'd like to make sure that we're using consistent terms across the whole zoning bylaw. So changing things from one family, make sure it's all single family or one family or whatever. I think it makes sense to reduce the height limit for detached accessory buildings not exceeding 200 square feet from 35 feet to something that would be more in scale with the allowable area of the structure. So an idea, we could do anything between, look at anything between 15 and 24 feet in height for a maximum height for those accessory buildings. Does that make sense? Is there a height we'd like to look at for those accessory buildings? Should we have some sort of table that scales it with size?
Yeah, that's a good question. Huh. What would what if it ends up being, you know, it'd be odd, but what ends up happens if it ends up being a 2-story, you know, let's say they get a special permit, 600 square feet per floor, and it ends up being 2-story. I mean, I think we could set one, and by special permit, they could request an increase, I guess, but
Mhm.
I don't know. What's everybody else think?
I mean, this section's specifically for not exceeding 200 square feet, right?
Yeah.
So
Correct.
sheds
Oh,
and
all
things
right.
like that.
Mhm.
I'm okay with not having people have towers.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
I was gonna say when I read that section, I was thinking, yeah, is someone gonna have this 3-story shed with that's like 6 by 6? That would be so funny.
Hey, it's allowed.
I think 20 feet would be reasonable.
Yeah, I agree.
Because that could be like a
20 feet's pretty
garage
tall.
or a barn.
To
kind
be
of
honest with you,
structure.
most of the structures on something, you know, that size are not going to even reach 20, you know, but I think 20 in relation to a house sitting next door to it that might be 2 stories and 35 feet high. I think 20 would be a reasonable.
Yeah,
Okay.
agree.
Okay.
I
And
have a
then
question.
yes.
Does that apply to farm buildings and barns?
No, this is just the accessory dwelling units specifically, I think.
Or no,
Is
it would
that-
be it would be any, so under the current bylaws, it would be any, we're looking at any
all right.
detached accessory building. So it could be farm
So silos,
buildings.
that's a good point. That's a
Oh,
good
true.
point.
Is that a building or a structure?
Yeah, and the question is, I mean, we're talking under 200 square feet here. You know, propensity, asylum, you know, I mean, I've seen very few silos less than, you know, 60-foot radius. You know, that's almost, I'm not sure how you measure out a square foot of a radius.
Should we, Jane?
I think we need to check the right to farm
Okay.
laws because the farm buildings may be exempt. And
You're absolutely
200
right,
feet,
they are.
I believe
good.
200 feet is the cutoff for needing a building permit. Like over 200 feet, 200 square feet, you need a building permit
Correct.
unless it has utilities in it. Then they might need an electric permit.
I actually thought it was 10 by 10 was the kicked in the
I've been
building.
Bill, I've actually been through it, so it's the 200 square feet. At least that's what I was told.
All right. Yeah, we'll check with what right to farm says. And I mean, we can always make a carve out for agricultural structures.
Mhm.
That again, we're you know, blue sky. We can do what we want with these bylaws. This is just based on what we have. And then also, we'll develop multifamily standards and make sure that they're added to the table. So under the bylaws, there's a bunch of different footnotes. So footnote 2 says frontage should be measured as a continuous line along one street only. Frontage on cul-de-sacs or along the curvature of a road shall be established by measuring along the arc of the curb established by the street layout, which may or may not coincide with the paved way between the points of intersection created by the side lot lines and the street. So Jane pulled this, but some communities allow for a front lot frontage on cul-de-sacs to be measured at the setback line rather than the arc of the curb established by the street layout. How do we feel? So Jane, do you want to talk about this?
Yeah, typically those pie-shaped lots at the end of a cul-de-sac tend to have less frontage being on the curve, but they widen out as they go back. And granted, this is more of a rural community, so the lot sizes may be bigger and they may be able to still meet the frontage requirement of a typical lot. But I didn't know if you have run into the situation where it's hard for those lots to meet frontage based right at the front lot line. Because
Yeah,
some
we've
other
seen it.
communities,
We've seen it. Fortunately, I think for the most part right now, the ones we've seen recently fell into open space developments.
oh, okay.
So we reduced the lot size anyways and reduced the lot frontage.
Okay.
So it kind of worked out.
Okay. If it's not an issue, we can just not worry about that one.
In the past history of Mendon, the 200-foot requirement was adhered to at the, I mean, there was one subdivision where waivers were provided, this before my time, but, I'm still dealing clean. It was a 59, housing unit, and we're still cleaning it up today, but, they allowed for a lower lot, the planning board, waived the lot frontage requirement, but I don't know.
Okay. And then looking at 6, so basically it is 6 says no structure shall exceed 35 feet unless a greater amount is specifically provided for in this bylaw. The height in each case shall be measured vertically from the highest point of the roof beams in the case of a flat roof, or from the top of the rafters at the ridge in the case of a sloping roof. Basically, it's how do we measure height. What Jane proposed is we should consider how height will be measured on sloped lots. Should we allow for an average of the height as measured at each corner of the structure on a sloped lot?
Well, that could greatly affect height. I mean, if you got a pitching backyard, you know, that could greatly affect the height requirement. Yeah. I personally think, you know, generally I would think that you'd use front elevation
Mhm.
as a requirement. I mean, that's my opinion. I'm not sure using a slope backyard to measure the height of the roof is really prudent. You know, it could put the property owner in a bad way, and really have no effect on the, you know, the area around them at all. I mean, most people worry about the front elevation and not the rear elevation.
Mhm. Any other thoughts?
I have to be honest, I'm not sure I understand the issue.
So it's just a question of how should we be measuring structure height differently when we're looking at a lot with some sort of slope? Because currently you're measuring from the mean grade of the natural ground contiguous to the building. Should we be measuring from the corner, like basically an average measured at each corner of the structure? Should we be measuring based on the front lot height? Carl.
Yes, as not a zoning expert, is the current 35-foot limit there for safety reasons in terms of fire trucks, or is it there in terms of not impacting other neighbors?
I think initially, it's because of fire apparatus. We don't have a ladder.
Mhm.
But really, and that's the other thing, really, is a fire truck can go down a sloped access in the backyard to access the property. I mean, that just wouldn't be a prudent way to attack a fire. And who knows, one of these days, maybe men will get a ladder. I keep trying to abscond one from a property developer, but I haven't been successful yet.
All right.
So
yeah.
just out of curiosity, so is it that,
We got one.
but by the way it's
do we?
measured by the mean grade of the
ARPA.
natural ground, does that mean it could actually be shorter than 35 feet? Because
Yeah,
of
it
some
can be
kind of
shorter.
sloping.
Mhm.
I don't know, this is gonna
Maybe-
sound stupid, but why wouldn't you measure it from like the foundation, like the above ground portion
Yeah,
of the
that's,
building to the top?
yeah, and that's kind of what I was referencing, Liana, is the front elevation is generally foundation grade, so.
Right, like that should make sense to me. If we don't care if it's over 35 feet above ground, why wouldn't we just draft it so that it's not 35 feet above the ground?
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah. So do we want to do 35 feet from the foundation based on front elevation, like the frontmost elevation of the lot?
I think you get tricky then. I think if
Okay.
someone decides to put a, a 4 foot or 5 foot foundation above grade,
Mhm.
now you're at 40 feet,
Mhm.
and maybe that's not a big deal to most. I think if you just use the term elevation, wherever they set that foundation level, the top would meet. And I think respectively, looking at most houses of what, 9 feet of floor, 18. And if you have a 12 pitch roof, you're probably talking, you're probably, you're, you're over 30 feet by the time you finish 12 pitch. So I think utilizing elevation actually is better than, because building department may be measuring off foundation height right now. And I think elevation would be a better example of that. I mean,
Okay.
we can either or, whatever anybody thinks. I mean, I'm to be honest with you, I'm not too bent either way. I think
Okay.
if we just use sensible,
Okay.
How,
We
how
can.
does the building code measure height? How does the building code define height?
that's what I was just wondering. I'm not sure, Alana,
Okay.
Leon, I can't answer that for you.
Yeah, we can revisit this. I'll look at what we'll look at what the building code says, and maybe bring a couple options. Anne?
Is the concern that if you measure from the yard that's less sloped up, that it would be too tall and kind of be towering?
Well, once again, I mean, it's still going to be more than likely at elevation in the front. I mean, what do you? I guess I don't want these bylaws to get to the point where they're awful imposing on property owners. We want to make reasonable assessments of these bylaws for the town in good consideration. Does creating a slope definition to measure roof height, does that benefit the town in any way? I'm not sure it does.
No, I think it's meant more to help property owners who might have a difficult lot by
Yeah.
averaging it out.
Okay.
And maybe
But
this is, again, I know we're gonna propose some other alternatives and look at this a little further, but this could also be, I think, this is just a vague recollection. I think the planning board had the discretion to waive some dimensional requirements. I don't think height was one of them. It could be that you just add, like, for a property that has a slope, the planning board can increase, whatever, do whatever. I don't know. See, maybe there's some opportunity to build some flexibility in that manner. If this is really a concern, I'm just throwing that out there.
I'm not sure, to be honest with you. The height requirement has been more of an issue in the commercial space than it has, and we don't defer from the 35 feet. I mean, we're having a warehouse built down on 140, and we stuck to strict compliance to the 35 feet.
Mhm. Okay. I think this is helpful, but I don't think we're gonna find an answer tonight. But we'll look at building code and maybe draft a couple options for the committee.
Sounds good.
And then finally, sec 7. So right now it reads, a corner lot shall have 2 front yards, one on each street. The required frontage for the lot must be provided on only one street. However, the front yard setback applies to both streets. And so what we were asking is, has the designation of 2 front setbacks resulted in property owners being unable to build a garage on their property? If so, we might want to consider a waiver option for building a garage. Has this been an issue with with 2 front setbacks on a corner lot restricting
No,
development? Okay.
yeah, we haven't seen it. I haven't seen it in front of the planning board as an issue. But
Okay.
I mean, a setback is 50 feet from the road. I'm not sure in a lot of cases that we're gonna want anything much closer than that. But like I said, it really hasn't been, I haven't seen it as an issue.
The only reason I brought that up is because it came up in another community we were working with. They had several homeowners in the center of town with smaller lots. And on the corner lots, they just did not have enough room to get to the side or back of the house in order to build a garage. So they wanted to make an exception for that. No other accessory buildings on one front side, but they would make that allowance for garages. But if
Certainly
it's not an
something-
issue,
Yeah, we can move on.
Certainly
if it's
something
not
to
an issue.
consider, but I mean, I wouldn't be opposed if it, especially with the small lots we got in the center of Mendon,
Okay.
might be a consideration.
Yeah. Cool. Then moving on to section 2.02. So Jane, do you want to handle this just because I mean you wrote this, but we have, yeah, you can take it.
yeah, we talked to Dylan and Jack about this also, and I believe it was Dylan who also agreed that we've never seen sewage regulations in zoning bylaws. That it's something that you most typically see in the subdivision rules and regs. So we're not sure if you want to keep it here or if you want to relocate it, make sure that it's covered in the subdivision regs.
You know what? It was probably better off just removing it. I mean, under site plan review and stuff, Board of Health manages the sewage regulations anyways. I mean, really isn't under the purview of the planning board. So they're already, we don't want to duplicate regulation that Mendon already has. The Board of Health already has, their set of regulations. There's no use duplicating it within the zoning bylaw.
Okay. Cool.
Just my feeling.
Yeah.
I have to administer these bylaws, and the less confusing we make it, not only makes it easier for the people of Mendon, but also makes it easier for the planning board.
And I didn't know when this was approved and if those dates for perk tests still applies or if that needs to be amended at all. It's just I'm just wondering. Brendan?
Sorry, not answering directly your question. I guess my comment would be, do you typically see any reference to the sewage regulations at all, even such that saying something like this is at the discretion of the Board of Health, ceding authority or directing the people reading these zoning bylaws that they have to go to the Board of Health for this?
I don't think I've ever seen that in zoning bylaws, but it doesn't mean we can't add just a statement saying refer to the Board of Health for this.
Yeah, I think it's kind of implied, Brendan, that if you're applying for a permit in the building department administers this, is that you have to meet the requirements and regulations of all boards. So building department would reference, you got to go to Board of Health. They have to get their ducks in a row before they're allowed a building permit. So I don't think it's necessary to reference that within the zoning bylaw. I think it's intended. Before any approvals can be met, it has to, meet all other boards, not only the planning board, but the Board of Health, conservation, and they have to get their ducks in a row. It's not for us to tell them that they have.
Okay.
Okay. So I think,
I've got a question about
Carl.
enforcement. I'm not quite sure how the building permit process works. Is there a a municipal document that says building permits must be approved by the following committees: Concom, Board of Health, Planning
Yeah,
Board.
there's like a checklist that has to be filled out before they can ever be administered a building permit.
As long as that's a document which has legal authority that the town council can take action on.
Oh,
then that's
absolutely.
fine. Okay.
I mean, and that's kind of a state thing that, you know, state building code requirement is that all these things are achieved before handing out a building permit.
Yeah, the online, just a comment that the online permitting system actually enforces that with a like kind of like a document workflow type system where every department has to sign off before it goes to the final permit.
Oh, that's cool.
So if you, yeah, viewpoint cloud.
That's awesome. All right. So I think, yeah, we'll either look at removing this entirely or referencing that this is under the discretion of Board of Health.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just want to get through what we can tonight. Do people want to go past, like, is there a time people want to get off and we can revisit this in a couple weeks, or
Yeah,
do we wanna-
I don't want to keep these meetings lasting an hour and a half, 2 hours, because we'll lose our viewership. You know, so I'd like to start being more prepared before we get to the meeting and kind of move through them, because we got a lot to do before June. And,
Yeah.
You know,
Okay. So how do other people feel? Do they want to continue tonight, or because we still have parking. Parking is kind of involved. That's the only reason I'm bringing this up. Then we have parking and signs, which I think both could each take, if you were taking them really seriously, those could each take, an hour.
well, why don't
So-
you get started on what we've already discussed tonight? Get us over some
Okay.
examples, and then we can deal with these at the next meeting. And
Okay.
and then we can do the same thing with that. When we're done with these, then you can provide us with that. But we could probably move on the first half that we're already talking about. So
Okay.
we can keep this an ebb and flow type of thing.
Okay.
And like I said, I want to kind of keep us focused, because I really want to get us inside the window. And I'm hoping that, and Jane, you might be able to let me know whether there's been any feedback on the subdivision rules and regulation grant that I applied for.
So where did you apply for that?
Dominique put it in, I think it was July.
Was that
Oh,
one stop?
okay.
What's that?
Or EEA would have been July. One stop would have been June. So,
I'm not, I can't tell you the exact date. I just know Dominique.
okay.
And
we
usually it
can-
takes about, like, when I applied for this grant, it was like June. And it took
Okay.
about to this time, it took about to October to find out that we finally achieved the grant.
Mhm.
So I'm
Mhm.
thinking maybe in the next couple weeks, we might find out whether
Yeah,
that grant's available.
we can check with Dominique. But I'm sure when she finds out, she will tell, like, when she can tell
Oh,
you,
yeah.
she'll tell you.
Yeah, she usually gets
Um,
in touch with me right away. She's an excitable one.
Um,
I love Dominique. She's great.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So probably, I mean, yeah, probably October or November, based on what you're telling me. So
Mhm.
All right. Well, I'll
Cool.
wait till-
So yeah, we'll start putting together some of the examples of stuff we talked about today, and I will also resend this document ahead of the next meeting. So I would encourage you all to just get a little familiar with the parking and sign regulations so that we can hit the ground running in a couple weeks. Are we good to meet? So are we good to meet on the 29th?
Anybody opposed to that?
Wait a minute, that sounds familiar.
Well, she's looking at that. I have no problem with the 29th, but will we I think lately you've been doing a good job of getting us stuff in advance. I just want to make sure we'll have, if we're planning on the 29th, that we'll have something, at least a few days in advance
Yeah.
to be able to look at. Yeah. The more in advance, the better.
Yeah, exactly.
I have another meeting that night. But if you want to handle it on your own, Gabe, that's fine.
Yeah, I think so. And if Dylan and Jack are here too,
Oh, cool.
or at least one of them, we'll see. Yeah. Okay.
I can
Yeah,
watch the
29th
video
works.
later to catch up. Okay.
All right,
Cool.
so we'll get a meeting posted for the 29th.
All right.
All right, Lonnie, you still with us? He's out there. All right, well, I mean, if
Motion
that's
to
all we
adjourn?
got for tonight. What's that?
Do you need to make a motion to adjourn?
That's what I need.
Second.
We're gonna do a roll call vote. All those in favor, Brendan,
Chanel, aye.
Moore,
Aye.
Tenio. He's lost. Mesa,
Aye.
Ambrosino, aye. Well, that's it for tonight, folks. Thanks for being
Thank
here.
you.
All right. Thank you. Have a
Thank
good
you so much.
evening.
We'll see you.
You
Bye.
too. Bye-bye.
Have a good evening.
You too.